Hi, I'm Gemma Craven,
And I'm Jeffrey Colon.
and this is the Wednesday Word on Social. So today, with the news that Zynga's chief creative officer departed the company close on the heels of the chief operating officer, we're going to be talking about the walled garden versus open approach, hot on the news of Twitter's API restrictions. So Jeffrey, let's talk some about what's happening with Twitter in the past week. So Twitter's changed. Twitter's restricted its application program interface fees. What does that mean?
Well, Twitter, the application programming interface allows any third party to program content or interaction with Twitter. So it basically allows you to use Twitter data to program anything that sort of helps your business in particular. And Twitter really was founded on this open API. In fact, a lot of third-party companies rushed out a few years ago to take advantage of the fact that it had an open API to build things around it. So you have everything from measurement services to analytical services, companies that use tracking, companies that use third-party CMS services, content management system services. So a variety of third-party platforms exist there that were able to take advantage of Twitter. And now Twitter is sort of saying, okay, we're going to close that API off and not really allow anyone to take advantage of this open API we've had for several years.
Which seems crazy. I mean, even Twitter's search functionality was built by a third party and then actually brought into the fold by the Twitter folks themselves. So why do you think that Twitter's actually taking this approach?
I think a lot of it is they're looking at how do we keep people on our platform, and then also if we have an open API, it's very hard for us to monetize. Very hard for them to monetize those services. So by shutting down the API, they're then able to build these sort of custom services that I think they'll end up saying, okay, if you want to utilize these, we'll charge extra for them to brands and users, and then that's how they'll look at sort of monetizing their platform. The problem is all these things were open in the first place, and now they're moving more toward a closed system. It actually reminds me of how many software companies worked back in the 70s and 80s where they had open source software and then it became proprietary. And of course, you had a lot of people sort of rebelling against that because they had been using it for, as a free service for many, many years.
I mean, Twitter has even removed the names of apps used to send tweets from the tweets themselves. For example, if you're using Hootsuite or Seismic, you could actually see that the tweet had been sent via that app, but now even that has been removed. So it seems very draconian for a platform, as we were saying, has been really built on this open sharing. So maybe this is going to be the start of people stopping to use Twitter, which would be a real shame in the sharing of real-time information, or as we were saying, it's their attempt to monetize the platform, which has been to date beyond the folks at Twitter to really get there.
Yeah, I mean, you see it. They're sort of going the Facebook route. I mean, Facebook is a walled garden. It doesn't have an open API for. I should say it has a limited API in terms of being able to build applications on it, but it has a closed API in other forms. Twitter seems to sort of be taking the footnote from Facebook's book here, where they're sort of saying we're going to go this route because we see it's working for Facebook, even though that might be up for debate, and we're going to sort of keep this as a walled, closed garden where everyone who comes into our establishment sort of has to abide by our rules.
And maybe looking at what's happening over at Zynga might be a flash forward into the future for Twitter. But I mean, what does this mean for the other platforms? Because LinkedIn, Instagram, and Tumblr have all been affected by how Twitter does not connect with them in terms of users finding other users. Do you think that other newer platforms are going to follow this approach that Twitter's set their sights on?
I think most of them will watch and see what happens. I think many of them are seeing that Facebook's approach isn't working in terms of their stock value. So I think they're sort of looking at this and saying the walled garden approach isn't necessarily the best way. I think they'll lean back and try to figure out if Twitter is successful at this. I think many will take this watch and wait approach, but several which are really built on sort of an open interface in the first place, Instagram, Tumblr, etc. I don't ever see them really going more toward a closed garden approach. They're really built on open source, open APIs, and they're really sort of built with the spirit of the open web in mind. And I would find it very interesting if they sort of just said, we're going to become our own community and sort of ignore or not allow synchronization with other social platforms. I think that's what allowed most of these platforms to get big in the first place, was their open APIs.
Right. Well, I mean, for the user, these changes really mean less integration between the platforms. For example, if you look on Tumblr, Tumblr's removed Twitter as a source in its friend finder feature due to these changes, but it will also affect some changes to services like Flipboard in terms of the kind of content that they can pull in from Twitter. So we'll be watching to see how these changes do affect the ecosystem and monitoring closely.
Yeah, it should be interesting, though. I mean, a lot of it it just shows sort of the evolution of the social web and how some services, how they existed just a few years ago, are radically changing overnight, and where they'll be in the next year, we'll have to sort of keep an eye out on how they progress.
Great. Well, thanks, Jeffrey. This has been the Wednesday Word. We'll see you next week.